if I may, Amanda, let me ask you one follow-up. You said God is big enough for your questions. So clearly the first place I think that we should go to find answers is the Bible. But then outside of that, or even to understand the Bible, what resources would you recommend for someone who says, you know what, I don't have much in the way of answers. I don't know how to answer what the atheists are asking. How do I start learning this stuff? Where do I go?
I think that Westerners in general need to brush up on their philosophy. Maybe it's just because I like philosophy and I always have. I understand if you're not naturally inclined toward, reading that kind of stuff, that it would be kind of a chore. But, I'm not big into having to read specific scientific facts or specific historical facts. Those are cool. I mean, I like science and history too. It's just that I really believe all of it is underpinned by philosophy. And if you don't understand the P's and the Q's, as they used to say in math class, it's much harder for you to really think in terms of why, if this, then this, and why. It's very, very key to these kinds of discussions with anybody, whether it's an atheist or just another Christian who believes slightly differently than you do. You should know how philosophy works. The science of thought itself is very important.
Where do they go to learn that? What do you recommend?
That's a really great question. I actually have had it on my list to read Plato, and I haven't personally yet. So... Yeah. So as far as, specific resources, I don't know for sure. I like to pick and choose from. Yeah, go ahead.
There's some websites that you can go to, the CARM, CARM.org, Christian Apologetics. I don't know what it stands for.
Resources? Ministries?
Yeah, guys like Frank Turek is good. C.S. Lewis, if you read Mere Christianity, that was like my primer to philosophical thinking. It's a little harder. C.S. Lewis is not super easy to read, but Mere Christianity changed my life. I didn't even realize that I was reading philosophy when I first read. I was in high school when I read it, and it's like, this book is amazing. But it'll start you down the path of just starting to be able to think and explain why you believe what you believe, and whether or not it makes sense.
Tim Keller's Reason for God.
Reason for God is a great book to read.
I've not read that one. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, Tim Keller's good.
Yeah, it's very simple, but it's like each chapter is a little nugget that, here's the question, and here's the answer, and then here's the question, and here's the answer. But it's very philosophical and reasonable.
Right. Well, and this might get me into some heretical trouble, but I honestly started with philosophy, and philosophical type arguing even before the Bible itself, because you need to apply philosophy and philosophical reasoning to the Bible. Right. And so, when I was, our regular listeners on our podcast know that I went through a postpartum depression and anxiety after my second baby was born. And I did have scripture posted around the house, and I was meditating on some of those things. But the crux of my own questioning was philosophical. It was, okay, how do I even know the Bible is true? How do I even know, let's say Jesus was real? Who cares? Why would that even, that was depression talking. But, I think they're the types of questions that deserve answers. And so, that was what I meant by God is big enough to handle your questions. That was ultimately what I came to. It's like, oh yeah, if I believe what I have always said I believed, then it's okay for me to be in this place right now where I don't even know if I can trust the Bible. He's going to stick with me while I sort all that out. And so yeah, I would definitely encourage, Christians, anybody to come up with their deepest, most probing question, that thing that gnaws at them that they think they're not even supposed to ask. Right. And realize that it's okay. You're using the mind that God gave you, so you're not just gonna fall off some cliff somewhere, mentally speaking, that God himself isn't already prepared for. So go for it, ask those questions and let other people question you too.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you a lot of times in church, we're told, well, obviously the Bible is true, and so you always go to the Bible first. You go to the Bible because you can trust the Bible. And we're not letting people discover that for themselves. It's like, well, how do you know that the Bible's true? You're just taking my word for it? Or worse, are you taking the preacher's word for it? You know, the preacher said the Bible is trustworthy, and so you just believe it. Right. That leads to fundamentalism, and that's not critical thinking. It's like, if you're not sure, I would start with the Bible is just a fairy tale. I mean, nothing in the Bible is true. Start there. And then go, all right, I'm gonna demonstrate that the Bible is nothing but fairy tales.
And there have been people who've tried that and wound up becoming Christian apologists.
Most of them do.
Exactly.
Most of the people who set out to do. But see, what you're doing now, Brian, is you're giving people answers that they're supposed to find for themselves.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's what I do. That's why I make puppets.
If you're a Christian person listening to this, and you don't know that the Bible's true, you only accept that it's true because somebody told you that, throw that out. Yep. The Bible's not any more true than any other fairy tale that you've ever read. And start there, because that's how you're going to build your own faith. It's like Mandy says, God can deal with it if you go, I don't believe in you. I don't think this Bible is special. I don't think there's anything different about it than any other piece of literature. That's not going to frighten God. The scripture says that if you seek me, you will find me. If you seek me with all your heart. It doesn't say if you seek me in the scriptures. It says if you seek me, you will find me. And so you'll find God if you look. Doesn't matter what.
Let me end with this is going to seem weird, but if I can make a couple of suggestions. First of all, I just talked to a guy named Mike Winger. Have you heard of Mike Winger? Look him up on YouTube. Mike Winger he's a youth pastor out in California, but he teaches a Sunday night sort of Bible study kind of thing, and sometimes it's topical. And I'm going to recommend him because he's talked about a couple of the things that you've talked about. He's got a series on Calvinism, which I think you would appreciate, because I believe you would line up with his perspective as I feel like I do. It's at least a conversation worth having, and he presents it like really well. And he's like, look, this is something people fight about, but he doesn't present it in a way of like, people who disagree are stupid. He comes across much nicer than I ever have the maturity to. So he sets a good example for me. But one of the things he said when I talked to him is that along the lines of her comment that God is big enough to handle your questions, and about doing homework on your own, he said, if you do a little bit of homework, that'll unsettle you. And you're going to go, oh, there's all these things I don't know. What do I believe? Is it true? But if you do a little more homework, then you'll be settled again, because you realize there are satisfying answers to all of those doubts. And also, I would like to recommend, if you like philosophy, which I'm a big philosophy geek, I recommend Peter Kreeft. Peter Kreeft is, it's spelled Kreeft. He teaches philosophy in Boston College and King's College. He's written a huge number of books. You can find him on iTunes, which is where I first found him, because I was on iTunes just looking up what's under philosophy, because that's the kind of person I am. I will search the word philosophy on iTunes. But he's a big Lord of the Rings fan. You don't like sports. I don't like sports. It's weird, isn't it? But he talks Lord of the Rings. He's a big C.S. Lewis fan and G.K. Chesterton, and so I think you would appreciate him. And there's a lot on the iTunes you don't have to pay for, so you don't have to pay any money to check into it. So for all my philosophy geek friends out there, check out Peter Kreeft. Anyway, I've taken up a whole lot of your time. I appreciate you guys talking to me, and I appreciate you blogging and podcasting. You guys are wonderful, and I wish you would adopt me, but I live kind of far away, so...
Well,
like, you don't like sports and you like philosophy. I should have been born at least in your town, if not actually in your family. But you know what?
Lord works in mysterious ways, doesn't he?
The brotherhood extends out here to beautiful sunny Illinois.
That's why God gave us the internet.
Yes. Anyway, so before I geek out and say something tremendously embarrassing, let me just say thank you for what you do, and thank you for coming here and talking to me today.
It was great, Brian. Thanks for the invitation.
Brian.
Let's do it again real soon.
Okay, that's a call.
All right.